So, good morning to all of you. Thank you for connecting today and connecting in time. I hope you enjoyed yesterday's session. And after today's lectures, we're over halfway the program. And as you know, after the practicalities to smoothly progress in this interdisciplinary program, I hope to connect some of the dots discussed during the first two modules of the program and further link them or put them into perspective by introducing today's topics. As during Module 2, we invite you to connect with our speakers through the Q&A, whereafter you are promoted as a panelist and can ask your question live. This is partly an online course as we listen to the feedback of those who preceded you in the other 8 editions. And most students highly welcome the opportunity to connect online. And obviously, it allows us to invite speakers from all over the world. And also today, we have 2 speakers who work and live in Spain. Next week, during our Friday and Saturday workshop, you will work together in your group and get to know your fellow colleagues. You have the opportunity, as you heard yesterday, to start collaborating and really cross boundaries. And as Elias came to me yesterday, so I switched him from group 5 to group 4. Now, with respect to both the MCQ exam as well as the case study group work, I wouldn't want to see this program leading to this. But we discussed this before. What I also don't want is for you or for your group to fully rely on AI systems. As I mentioned before, and I will showcase this in the next slide, ChatGPT doesn't always give you the right answer. I believe that AI can help us advance and provide some limited information or guidance to direct your work. And it could serve advancing medical knowledge in general when we embrace the technology. But ChatGPT does actually nothing. It only answers to your prompts. So make sure you use the results in a very critical way. Be aware that even when asking a question with what seems the right prompt, the answer provided by ChatGPT is not always correct. A quick look at the answer to the question to list all the approved FDA and EMA gene therapies, it shows already the incompleteness of the answer. Because as you see, EMA approved Libmeldi, and I already alluded to this drug because it's currently the highest costs, or the highest priced gene therapy. And we find ChatGPT answers that it's not FDA approved. However, it is under another name. So that's maybe why the system didn't find it. So be very aware and be critical. Particularly for the MCQ exam that all of you will have to take, know that you can use the material on the UV platform. So all presentations on the platform, you can use it to answer the questions, but you won't have the time to look up everything. So know that the time you have is limited, and that upon following the different modules and through getting an insight into how the different presentations within a module are linked and then how different modules are interlinked, you should be able to answer without the need to look up everything. The idea is that you understand the challenges that come along with innovative therapy development. And as you probably start to understand, with the introduction to each module, I helped you make some of these links. This is a graphic view on your answers provided during our on-site module 1 on the question, what is the biggest health challenge or we face in healthcare in the coming decades? Most of you chose funding and investment in R&D, the financial sustainability of health systems as top challenges. And related to this, on the shared third place, are the rising cost of innovative therapies, antimicrobial resistance, or AMR, and the prevention of diseases. As you know, it is our aim in this interdisciplinary program in healthcare innovation to introduce you and give you some expert insights in some of these challenges listed here. This course is interdisciplinary in essence. I know that all of you come from different backgrounds, and it is really my goal to give you an insight in the healthcare innovation ecosystem, the challenges and opportunities in the drug development lifecycle by linking all these different modules in this course together. Look at it as reading the newspaper. Depending on your interest, you cherry pick a specific topic that interests you more. And then, and I take the example of the overview of the Lancet news that reaches my inbox every week, several topics there are discussed, some very technical, challenging science articles that are more interesting to domain experts. Many are policy related and hint towards initiatives set up or needed to progress innovation in a specific area. So connecting the dots. During module 1, you got an insight in what translational medicine is. Major breakthrough innovation reached us through the Human Genome Project. The knowledge gained through this publicly funded project accelerated life science with a huge leap forward. You were introduced in some of the challenges we face. You saw the decline in pharmaceutical productivity, the strict regulations the pharmaceutical sector faces, and the lack of truly innovative treatments that reach patients facing a high unmet medical need. We started this very first module with this little girl, Pia, that needed a very expensive gene therapy but could not have it in Belgium. So the cost of drugs, the budget impact of those drugs, as well as the accessibility were discussed. In order to stimulate pharmaceutical companies to invest in highly needed therapeutic innovation, there are monopoly rights awarded through the patent system that reward the innovator for the resources invested. And you remember the timelines, right? It takes about 10 to 15 years to bring a drug on the market, so there's only a limited time to recoup these investments and make profits. Obviously, the idea is that these profits are turned into new investment capital. And beyond the patents that create these markets monopolies, there are regulatory data protection to protect the clinical data. And especially for orphan drugs, the regulator issued the 10 years guaranteed market exclusivity, so very often extending the patent term. We just need to make sure that this fragile balance between the right to healthcare at an affordable price, the stimulation of innovation, and the sustainability of the healthcare system is kept under control. So after the success of genomics, transcriptomics, proteomics, metabolomics, it becomes really clear that we also need economics. And as you know by now, it needs changes in the ecosystem. As you heard yesterday multiple times, we need healthcare professionals able to think in an interdisciplinary way. We need you. And we discussed in return for the monopoly position offered through the patent system to the patent holder, the health sector is highly regulated. What is key to remember for you is that market authorization, so a medicinal product entering the market, and in Europe, this is organized by the European Medicines Agency, EMA, so at the regional level. The patent system finds its base in the TRIPS agreement established by the World Trade Organization, WTO, at the international level. And as we discussed last week, pricing and reimbursement are organized at the national level, so per member states in Europe. But we heard from Matthias Neet and Sana Akudat that collaboration and joint negotiation processes would offer countries a better position in pricing negotiations. Also, yesterday, many of the speakers alluded to this increased collaboration. Mechanisms are designed to encourage companies to undertake R&D on new drugs, and they are generally characterized as either push or pull programs. Push programs aim to reduce industry's R&D costs through direct grants, technical assistance, reduction in development times, or tax breaks. In contrast, pull mechanisms aim to create incentives by creating viable market demand and or revenues when new products are approved. The economic impact of these mechanisms differ significantly. While push mechanisms reward effort, so ex ante, irrespective of the outcome of the drug reaching the market, pull incentives reward the results, so ex post. So only if the expected outcome was achieved. So push incentives subsidize the overall development cost, while pull incentives reward successful development, providing guaranteed return on investment. We discussed already some of the incentives issued by government to accelerate drug development and speed up the regulatory process and increase access so innovative products find their way to the patient more quickly. We need to prepare health systems globally for the challenges we face. We need to set up policies and guidelines. And as legislation always follows science, we need to make sure that we don't hamper innovation. And we do this by setting up adaptive policies. We should prepare for the new ways to assess the innovations and allow a certain degree of unavoidable uncertainty. And we need to build our data analysis systems in a way it allows to add value. And last week you heard about conditional, the so-termed limited authorization of regenerative medicinal products, so-called advanced therapy medicinal products or ATMPs, which are in essence cell and gene therapies and tissue engineered products. Also, last week, you heard about those conditional market authorizations being linked to performance-based managed entry agreements. And we heard more about the new HTA regulation to mitigate the challenges related to affordability. Coming back on this, on the shared third place, you chose prevention of diseases and AMR. When I talk to friends and they ask me, what do you do actually? And it must have been somewhere late 2019, I tried to explain what we, with the I3H Institute, are working on. I was trying to explain that at that time, the biggest threat I saw or that we face is AMR or antimicrobial resistance. Well, then early January 2020, it seemed that the SARS-CoV-2 so COVID-19 virus was faster than the bacterial threat. But we do face a global epidemic. And I'm very, very happy and honored that Professor Jorge Mestre Ferrandis will help me in sharing with you the bad news show. But I already give you some very frightening numbers. AMR is one of the top global public health and development threats. It is estimated that bacterial AMR was directly responsible for 1.27 million global deaths in 2019. And I didn't find updated numbers on this, and it contributed to 4.95 million deaths. The misuse and overuse of antimicrobials in humans, animals, and plants are the main drivers in the development of drug-resistant pathogens. AMR affects countries in all regions and at all income levels. Its drivers and consequences are exacerbated by poverty and inequality, and low and middle-income countries are most affected, as we heard yesterday. AMR puts many of the gains of modern medicine at risk. It makes infections harder to treat and makes other medical procedures and treatments such as surgery, cesarean section, and cancer chemotherapy much riskier. The last thing I want to do is to steal Professor Mestre's thunder, so I let him continue to talk about AMR having also significant economic costs. And the picture here on top, these are push and pull incentives. The picture on top is actually a picture from Canada. The one below is from the US, where you see the ARPA Health, where Professor Mathias de Watripon alluded to yesterday. Now, Canada, US, where is Europe? We need leadership, we need accountability, we need transparency. We heard this yesterday. We need incentives to turn the tide in the AMR fight. The European Commission is in the process of introducing some of the largest reforms to pharmaceutical development in the 27-nation bloc. We get an insight of what that could entail from our economist in a minute, but largely the new pharmaceutical package, as it's called, pharma package, has two objectives: to address patients' interests across Europe and fully support an innovative and globally competitive EU industry. To that extent, Stella Kyriakides, the former Commissioner for Health and Food Safety of the European Commission, stated, and I quote her, "We need ambitious tools to combat antimicrobial resistance, the silent killer that at the moment claims more than 35,000 lives per year. Our pharma reform is the perfect vehicle, and it will include measures both to stimulate new antimicrobial products as well as prudent use. So incentives to stimulate antibiotic development and monitoring to avoid misuse. As part of the proposed reform, the European Commission proposed introducing transferable exclusivity vouchers to incentivize developing new antimicrobials that would be granted and used under yet undisclosed strict conditions. The priority review voucher system in the US, the United States, gives a company either a priority review for their next drug, or the voucher may also be sold to another company, and the voucher generally fetches about 100 million US dollars. But Professor Mestre will further comment on this. So we need leadership, accountability, and stronger collaboration between European member states. I was a little surprised when looking at how you answered that drug shortages was not or not yet a concern to any one of you. Did you read the news that Merck, a big pharmaceutical company, it will open $1 billion US facility to make Gardasil? Merck has opened a new manufacturing plant in Durham in the US, which will make HPV vaccines. Human papillomavirus is responsible for many cancers, notably cervical cancer. The opening of the factory comes at a time of heightened talks of reshoring manufacturing to the US as a way to sidestep President Donald Trump's tariffs on products made overseas. A document of the European Commission stemming back from 2021 entitled Strategic Dependencies and Capacities. It identifies 260 products where the US is still dependent from EU import. And on that list are, amongst others, antibiotics, radiation therapy, and pacemakers. And essential antibiotics are produced in Italy. Most isotopes for radiation therapy are produced in Germany. The US needs Europe to meet the US patient demand. This document was originally meant to identify supply chain weaknesses after what we witnessed during the COVID-19 pandemic. However, it's now being reused to show European leaders that we do have our strengths in Europe and we need to use them strategically. Issuing medical export limitations was on the table this week. It would be a highly controversial strategy, even unethical. However, this was on the table as a shock effect to stand up against Trump. Former sanctions against Russia after invading Ukraine deliberately excluded life-saving therapies for moral reasons. And you see how fragile this balance is, how the challenges at national, regional, and international level affect affordable healthcare for patients worldwide. The evidence of the effectiveness of policy instruments is often limited, yet this is vitally important to understand. Policy instruments are not intrinsically effective. They need to be appropriate for the context in which they are implemented. This requires evaluation to demonstrate. And this is actually what we aim to do within the I3H Institute, particularly through our role in the European High Pre project, where we work with the Imperial College London team of Professor Marisa Miraldo to map different innovation policies, both push and pull and mixed incentives and their effect, potentially combined effect on innovation. And I can recommend this report by Michael Hopkins and Jorge Mestre Fernández and their team on non-price related policy instruments. Over the last two modules and during yesterday's annual lecture, we've discussed ways to bring healthcare innovation to the patient. I extensively highlighted the need for a change in the ecosystem. Well, the pivotal role for collaboration on the different needs, different fields needed to accelerate innovation was highlighted many times before. There is the science, the need to reflect in an interdisciplinary way on the regulatory pathways, the need for multi-stakeholders, public-private partnerships, Many speakers stipulated the crucial role for leadership, stewardship, and accountability. And obviously, as Professor Michel Kazachkin stipulated yesterday, we need community engagement to bring and assure uptake of the innovation by the patient and society, as only then we can turn an invention into a real innovation. And here I deliberately skipped risk tolerant financing, as this is what this whole morning session is about, navigating between state intervention and market forces. Advanced market commitments or joint procurements was shortly discussed by Professor Mathias Watripon yesterday, and he will definitely come back to this. The European Commission guaranteed the purchase of different COVID-19 vaccines once they reached the market, something that surpassed the vaccine nationalism of 4 European member states, amongst other France and Germany. Advanced market commitments were a strong pull incentive and showed what the European Health Union was about. Vaccines are mainly known for their prophylactic use to prevent people from getting sick. Yesterday, we heard the need for community engagement to face the growing vaccine hesitancy. When thinking of the rise in measles infections in Europe, and even worse, polio, a disease that we could have eradicated by now. Prevention is key. We need a change in how we define accountability. And I'm convinced that if we could rely on more people showing political leadership and going beyond short-term thinking and elections, we could do so much more on the level of prevention. Because sugar taxes might bring money to the state treasury, I'm not really convinced of the true added value of this policy decision in the battle to combat the growing obesity epidemic. And do you, by the way, know that obesity is actually an epidemic in slow motion? Obesity causes chronic inflammation of the body, making patients more vulnerable for diseases. It is one of the most expensive cost items within the healthcare system. And why do I mention obesity? Well, not only can obesity in many cases be prevented, but now therapeutically, drugs like Ozempic, acting like GPL-1 receptor agonists, are used and in many cases misused by people wanting to lose weight, which, as you know, led to drug shortages in many countries and putting stress on diabetes patients. Preventing the patient from becoming an actual patient is very important, and much more attention to prevention is needed. Most of you are familiar with prophylactic vaccines preventing people from getting sick when they would be infected with, for example, measles. This afternoon, you'll hear more about therapeutic vaccines, which are meant to help the body to do a better job of fighting against an illness it already has and can be used for many different kinds of health threats, including viruses, cancer, and more. Like prophylactic vaccines, therapeutic vaccines introduce antigens associated with an illness. The difference is that the goal is not to teach the body to fight against a new kind of illness, but rather to encourage the body to fight harder against an illness it already has. For example, a therapeutic vaccine for cancer might introduce antigens created by tumors. This would effectively teach the body's immune system to attack that antigen as well as the cancerous cells that produce it. A therapeutic vaccine for HIV, on the other hand, it might introduce more HIV antigens into the body. And this then can help to strengthen an existing immune response and help the body contain the infection. These vaccines are a very hot area of pharmaceutical development and hold a lot of promises for revolutionizing treatments for cancer, Alzheimer's disease, and many more. It's worth noting, however, that they aren't quite at the same level of the establishment of prophylactic vaccines, and a bit more work is needed to get these vaccines to a point where they consistently get great results for many people. And Professor Damia Laoui will tell you more about this. The world's biggest killer is ischemic heart disease, responsible for 13% of the world's total deaths. Since 2000, the largest increase in deaths has been for this disease, rising by 2.7 million from 2.7 to 9.1 million deaths in 2021. As a newly emerged cause of death, COVID-19 was directly responsible for 8.8 million deaths in 2021 and consequently largely pushed down other leading causes of death by one place. Instead of being the second leading cause of death in 2019, stroke became the third in 2021, responsible for approximately 10% of total death, respectively. Accompanying the aging of population worldwide and increased survival with chronic diseases, the incidence and prevalence of atrial fibrillation, or AF, are rising, justifying the term global epidemic. Heart diseases are by far the major cause of death worldwide. And I've looked at the most recent figures, but unfortunately, I didn't find a graph for 2024 nor 2025. So to make it visually, here you find the graph for 2021, but nothing has changed so far. Cardiac ablation is a treatment for irregular heartbeats called arrhythmias. It uses heat or cold energy to create tiny scars in the heart, and the scars block faulty heart signals and restore a typical heartbeat. Cardiac ablation is most often done using thin, flexible tubes called catheters that are inserted through a blood vessel. Less commonly, ablation is done during heart surgery. And Professor Nele van der Sickel will present her research this afternoon. She found a way to change the current standard of care, or the way doctors should look at where exactly the arrhythmia occurs. When you see the risk accompanying atrial fibrillation surgery, you want to minimize the number of procedures needed. Further, again, by increasing the accuracy of treatment, we avoid wasting resources. And we'll end the day with a lecture from Professor Anne Hoestenbergje from King's College London. She develops technology for the next generation of implantable electronic devices to improve the quality of life of patients through applications such as neuromodulation and electrical stimulation for the restoration of movement in paralyzed muscles and biopotential recording for control of prostheses and artificial organs. And she'll definitely talk about the many opportunities these implantable devices bring for patients. And I'm sure she'll discuss some ethic concerns and even threats too. If not, don't hesitate to ask her at the end of her lecture. He's a genius, this Musk, but someone should stop this person from ruining everything that people fought for decades in our health sector. And the political leadership won't be coming from that side. This we know. So without being an expert in obesity, a study published last Tuesday in The Lancet warns of the escalation for obesity and overweight pandemic if no action is taken to reverse the trend. This increase would particularly affect Asia and Africa. And you don't need to be an expert in Alzheimer to know that we need more collaboration and sharing of data to find this needle in the haystack to fight the dementia pandemic coming towards us. You don't have to be a microbiologist or infectiologist to read this article or understand the risks of a new pandemic. The numbers and forecasts shown yesterday by Professor Michel Kazachkin, they were really frightening. We know the next pandemic is it's just behind the corner. It's just a matter of time. But we need policies to incentivize different stakeholders to speed up research and development through grant funding, through public-private partnerships, through advanced market commitments, through a mix of push and pull mechanisms that will speed up innovation. So this was the news of this week. Thank you.